Welcome to the Gamification Quest podcast series, where we showcase the voices behind our new collection on gamification and game-based learning, the Sententia Anthology. I'm your host, Monica Cornetti, and in each episode, I sit down with one of our authors to explore the ideas and stories they've brought to life in their chapter. Together, these conversations reveal how creative, passionate professionals are transforming the way adults learn. Let's dive in. Hi, my name is Monica Cornetti, and welcome to this special edition of the Gamification Quest podcast. Now, I have a really fun edition today because I have two guests with me. So I have Susan Peahl, who wrote a chapter of our anthology. But I also have her tech advisor with me. His name is Phil Ferrone. And so in Sue's chapter, which is titled Clarity Before Clicks, Before You Buy That Tech, Sue runs through what we need to be looking at because Sue self-identifies as not a tools person. She is more focused on the learner and what they're going to learn and how she's going to make that dynamic and what is she bringing to the table with her experience, because she's worked with more than 10,000 leaders across industries. So she knows how to work with leaders, but she didn't actually know that much about the technology. So that's why she brought Phil in as her technology advisor. Sue has a background in drama, improvisation. She's an actress. She has this rare ability to connect with audience and make learning really memorable. And of course, Phil brings a lot of his own leadership experience to the conversation because he's worked in some very high-tech fields, has done instructional design, has done game design, and he knows what he's talking about when it comes to investing not only in the training, but the technology that will back that up. So thank you, both Sue and Phil, for being here with me today. I'm really excited after reading your chapter, Sue, and then thinking about these decisions that are tough to make, and decisions like I make the analogy of we might as well just pile the money in the middle of the room and light a match to it because it's going to have the same outcome as not exploring the technology that we're going to use and just making a snap decision without really knowing what we're doing. It's the same exact outcome, nothing. We're just wasting money, burning money. So talk with me, Sue. What really inspired you as you thought about what you were going to add to the anthology? Why this particular theme? Why did you settle on clarity before clicks?
I think in my decades now, plural, of experience as delivering training, designing training, being a learning and development consultant, and working with so many clients, I deliver predominantly live instructor-led training. And I know how to design all the other stuff, and I have a master's degree in that as well. I think in my experience, I would get so many training requests saying from people who had nothing to do with learning and development. They were experts in other stuff, medical manufacturing, aerospace, finance, etc., saying, we think the training should be like this and look like this and be done in this time frame and cost this. And my first question would probably be, well, okay, what do you want the learners to be able to do? I don't know, we picked these titles off a list. They sound good. It's like, okay, let's back up. So I had to spend years figuring out how to quickly kind of educate clients on how to bring training in. Fast forward to when I entered the Sententia community and started, getting certifications and such in gamification for learning, there are some amazing analog games created by our colleagues in the gamification world and in Sententia in particular. Beautiful board games, card games, etc. But when I was going for my master craftsman, my creative mind created this whole gorgeous medieval world, and I did a really good job of figuring out how am I going to get the learner to do the behaviors I need them to do. And my trainings are interpersonal skills, not so much technical skills. So communication, empathy, change management, building high performing teams, how to be a leader, etc. So that's a lot of behavior that requires not just how do I do it, but let's practice doing it. And how do you make it engaging and interactive? Because that's the point of gamifying learning. The point is not to get them through and check off the box, okay, they had that training. It's to get the behavior change that the business objective needs and to do it in a very engaging way. So back in 2020, when I was with the OGs of Sententia, of the Master Craftsman, what was available at that time is like the main tool was Storyline. And so as an individual contributor, I didn't work for a company that already paid for a Storyline license. And I couldn't afford to chunk out the $1,600 or whatever to pay for the Adobe Suite, etc. And then I was like, there's a 30-day free trial. There is no way I'm going to learn Storyline and build all this in 30 days and do my job, etc., and all the other things. So then life happened, some other stuff happened. So when I came back to Sententia, I was so grateful that you partnered me with Phil, because that gave me the opportunity to keep my ideas in a tech platform. But in that time, those few years, technology has changed so much that Storyline is kind of limiting. So that's kind of one fact pattern of why I came to this chapter. The other shorter answer is, in our Sententia cohort, I observe every single day in our WhatsApp group the tech and tools people asking each other, hey, how do I get this to work? How do I get this to talk to this? How do I make this function happen? And they're striving to create really engaging and effective learnings. And remember, learning is about behavior change to meet the business objectives. And it's always, they're coders, they're creating their own patches. They're saying, don't do it in that software, do it in this one. And I'm like, okay, well, what if your company doesn't have this one? Or what if you're a lone consultant? How much money are you going to spend on software? And then, as Phil can attest to, now AI, people think AI can do everything. I sat in an 1.5-hour meeting with really skilled tools people trying to get AI voiceover to say 2 sentences in a very human-like way, and doing it with commas and coding and all this. And I was just like, so what employers don't realize, and what they don't realize when they post job descriptions asking for learning and development professionals, is it takes a village. It takes a team of experts. And listen to the experts, hire the experts, listen to the experts. It will save you money. And you cannot have one person be a designer and a developer and manage the LMS and these tools are still limited, in that I'll let Phil talk to his experience with tech and stuff. But I guess my point is, the tools can bog you down. They cost a lot of money. They keep changing. So if you invested in a bunch over here, these can go away. As Phil can attest to, tools come and then they just disappear. They evaporate and you've spent money. So don't spend money until you really assess what your business goals are, what your skill gaps are. My whole chapter tells you how to do that pretty much, and what behavior you need. And then who are your learners and how can you get them to that behavior to meet the business goals within the time and the budget that you have. And the whole book is about gamification. So we're not talking about PowerPoints. We're talking about high level engagement. And Phil and I use the phrase, let's put more game in our game. To me, gamification is not just giving points and prizes. It's not just playing a fun game and then coming back to the learning content. My goal is always to embed the learning content within the game, so that by playing the game, you're learning the behavior and applying the behavior that you need. And you're going to have to retain it and use it later on in the game, because that's another issue that a lot of organizations have, is they design modules on different planets instead of having them have a through line. I'll shut up in just a second. Phil and I just spoke before we came on with you, and he was talking about, I'll let Phil talk about, is it AXPI or whatever, that it can't really track learner behavior. And I was like, everything he was saying, I said, oh my gosh, I do that when I'm live in the classroom. I am tracking, I can see the looks on their faces, I hear their answers. I'm tracking, are they taking this in? Who is struggling? What do they need? And I, in the moment, make the pivots to help give the learner what they need. And then I make notes for next time I deliver this class, I'm going to provide a handout for these type of learners. Not everyone needs it. Or I'm going to do a better job describing this activity, or I need to give them 10 more minutes of time on this, or I need what's needed. I pivot as a live training person. And then we also talked about, I can tell in an 8-week leadership program, when we get to module 7, change management, if the person is not exhibiting what they learned in the communication skills modules, they didn't retain the learning. And I have to figure out why, and can I redesign that? So I'm doing all these things that we would wish our technology would do.
That's really good.
So these are I just saw technology bogging people down and costing a lot of money. And I am not anti-tech. Phil can tell you I have big tech dream, like build this, and we work together. And fortunately, he is like, a Jedi master with technology. So he makes an awful lot happen. But then we get stuck with cost. We're stuck now. We need a game engine to complete our employment laws course. Yeah. And then if we sell it to employers, how are they going to host it? Will they have the technology to even run the course? So I hand it over to Phil for Tech Talk now. Like, why do you think this topic is important, Phil? Because you're the expert on the tech side for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think, Phil, as you give it's like we have an idea, and I can see Sue, like, do your magic now, Phil. You do your tech stuff. Here's what I want. Now you do your thing, and then let me know. And without having a full understanding of what that even means. And I love what you said about AI, Sue, because a lot of companies have taken the position they're just going to use AI. They won't bring somebody else like onto the L&D staff. They'll just use AI, which I am not discounting the idea of we can use AI to our benefit, but we can't. It's not going to fully replace. You still have to have that individual there who is in tune with the learners and what do you want them to do differently. Technology isn't going to just make that happen magically. So what are your thoughts then on the L&D, Phil, as far as the tech? And do your magic, Phil. Just do your magic.
What was the question there, Monica?
My question is, sorry, I know I kind of went, but like we like design, like, and then I buy licenses, or I buy a software, or I say we're going to use this software. So now I'm going to hand it over to my tech guy, and I want you to take all my ideas and make your magic happen. And I mean, I think Sue addressed a lot of reasons why that can't just happen on the get-go. But why do you think that is so common? Why do so many companies approach it that way? It's very flawed, but I think it's a common approach.
Let me give you an example that I went through in about 10 years ago when I came into this organization, and they had an existing learning management system, but it was very, very unique. They had done a lot of let's just say development on their own installed version, so it no longer represented or looked like what the company was selling. And so it was at end of life, and they decided that they would put a team together to look at learning management systems. So I got selected because this would have been my 5th LMS selection team that I've been on. And so we selected a learning management system. Management came back and said, nope, we're not going to buy that one. It costs too much money, so we're going to buy the other one. And we said, well, but this one doesn't meet our requirements for, let's say, a question bank, an exam bank, that type of thing that we really need, and we need securities on those for various reasons. But the decision was made. They were going to spend X amount of dollars on it. So we ended up with a learning management system. And at the end of the decade, we had spent far, far more money on bringing that system up to where we needed it. We also had to, it's a Frankenstein system because we had to go out and get a exam bank, a totally different exam bank, and then we had to have internal databases to run in between these data sets that we needed to send out to the industry. It was a mess. We made it work. It wasn't always efficient. And the downside is that when you do a learning management system swap over, you better figure that it's going to take you at least a year. And that's a full team of people because you've got, especially if you've got learning content already, which we did, a couple hundreds, actually about 600 pieces of e-learning that we had to migrate to the new system. So all that took well over a year to get square, and then even starting up we sputtered. A large cost. What was the decision? We wanted to save a couple $100,000, but in the end we spent well over that.
Yeah.
And so that's the downside of the tech
it's such a tough decision when you're looking at the resources it's going to take to bring it online, right? Like, well, we could just, we want this done by the end of the year, Phil. Just make it so, right? Like, how hard can it be? Right?
Correct.
It's not what the salesperson told us. They told us that you can get this up and running in 6 weeks time.
Well, and I'm guessing too that you said a decade, Phil. You said a decade of looking at all this. I'm guessing that their e-learning pieces were very much like click through PowerPoints, maybe a few videos. They weren't gamified. They weren't games and gorgeous graphics and game-like functions. And as I've learned, so, what other software do you need to get that will talk to that learning management system and vice versa? And what I've also learned from Phil is learning management systems don't really track learner behavior. They might track when the learner starts and finishes a course, or if they did, maybe the score they got on the multiple choice quiz. Like our learning checks and assessments are boxed into, multiple choice quizzes, which isn't the best way for everyone to learn and retain and to practice the skill. So, what software are you going to get to find out where the learner's spending more time or experiencing difficulty, and where's the engagement?
Yeah, it's really good because when we think about, I don't know how many LMSs are on the market right now, but I'd say probably close to 800. Many of them will say they're gamified, and we say, oh, that's really cool. What do you got? Well, they have some points, they have some badges, they have a leaderboard, but because, Sue, they can measure exactly what you were talking about. When did you start? When did you finish? How did you score on that multiple choice quiz, which is the lowest common denominator, right? Like, that's the lowest form of knowledge check that we can possibly give somebody, is a multiple choice quiz. But it can't measure behavior change, because how are you measuring behavior change? How are you going to have them practice that skill and then have feedback from their manager or leader or from a colleague or a direct report so that they can keep practicing it and getting better at those skills? It's not designed to measure that. So we can only measure things that are very algorithmic based. If this, then that. If not, then this, right? That's all it can measure.
And I think to add into our overall thesis, which is, don't spend the money until you know what you need. So this stuff can cost a lot of money. We have to factor in the man hours, the wages of the designers and the developers. and delivering training and tracking results and measuring results and all. We have to factor all that in. And in my years of even with live training, when a client asks for something customized, when they find out how long that really takes to build, even when I'm already the subject matter expert, so I don't have to go out and find and interview people, I just have to rewrite a course to get the behavior that this client wants from these specific people for their particular industry. They don't want to pay for the hours it takes. They don't realize that the old basic standard was it takes 40 hours of development for 1 hour of live delivery training. And that's when you're already the expert. And then the old standard for Brian Chapman did a study, but it's like 10 years old now, but he did a study and live, and depending on, are you going to add videos, video production, are you going to add, workbooks, handout, what are you going to add? So it's like anywhere from like 160 to like 2,000 hours per 1 hour of e-learning content. And that's not even gamified. That's like click through PowerPoint. Right, Phil? Would you say similar, different?
Yeah, when you get up into the level 3s, the high interaction piece, you're looking at like 465 hours per hour of development time. That's probably with a storyline type.
Right. And that's the developer, the tech person. That's not even the designing time.
That is actually team time. That's
okay. I lied.
Yes.
So when you think about that, but
that's
we're also
average.
assuming somebody's a subject matter expert, right? We're also assuming that I don't have to go out there and learn all about this infrared camera, but there's somebody who actually has subject matter expertise on the infrared camera who can give me all that. So now we can go and design. Yeah.
And this is another reason why we really urge organizations to listen to a learning expert. Is a subject matter expert often in companies gets turned into a training person. And first of all, they're not trained in how people learned, and that really is a science. Education is a science. And then also, I do this too. Even once I design training, I know the content so well that my brain is filling in the gaps, and I'm not receiving it the way the learner is receiving it, which is why we have to do beta testing, we have to do play testing, we have to do iterations so that our typical learners can tell us how they're experiencing this course. And so a SME is just going to mentally fill in what is missing for the normal learner.
That's really good. So I don't want this to be like Debbie Downer chapter.
No.
But
we love tech. There's solutions.
We love technology. We want technology. And it costs money. It costs real time, real money to add that technology. But doesn't mean that it can't be done, because there's lots of great examples out there where people have, like right now, like the program that you developed for your level 3 for your master craftsman certification. That was a masterful program. It was really just the learning and behavior change and the technology. I mean, it all just came together. But like now, as you're thinking about that law course that I know you've had on that back burner for a long time now, what you're looking at is you need some kind of game engine. That what you're looking at right now, Phil, you're not happy with what already exists. It won't do what you need it to do. Or what's causing the challenge there?
Right. So, we took Myst as our base model for this, and Myst was a relatively simple game back in the day, and we're using Storyline, but Storyline is very limited, especially when you get into its abilities. You can't really build things in the Storyline unless you really want to code, and then you get into issues with outside code and that type of thing. So I'm actually working on, and actually do have a prototype of our level 3 project in Unity. And so I've already started building what I call systems to work within that environment, which will streamline the user interface and streamline the user experience. So I'll just give you one example. So in a storyline, you kind of maybe you had to click around because you need to define where this door was or where the magic lever was. And but that's basically all you got to click around, and maybe you could bring up a pop-up, maybe a pop-up text or something to explain what was going on. In Unity now, what I've got is a system that actually works like when you mouse over something, it brings up an interface for you, and it says, what do you want to do? Do you want to inspect this? Do you want to get it, or do you want to interact with it? So that's already going far and above the user experience, because now the user goes, oh, okay, I have these options now, and I know what I'm doing, rather than getting frustrated by clicking all over the screen trying to find where to go next. So, and so that's, Unity is, I know Unity is probably a bigger engine than we need, but it has a lot of the tools. And I've also found a very interesting, since we do use narrative a lot in this particular game environment, written narrative. And so I found a plugin called Fungus for Unity that excels in narrative games. And so basically, we're using that other engine inside Unity to build the narratives and some of the programming that goes along with it and the decision-making processes. So it makes it a lot easier than having to do what limited programming you can do in Storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had I think stronger game design in place before we had to finish and turn in our project, and we just said, okay, in order for us to graduate from this program, we're going to have to just stay within the boundaries of what Storyline can provide us. So Phil, by the way, I do not want to make it sound like I did all the design. Like, I really provided content, and Phil, we really collaborated quite equally on design. But one of the things he said is, okay, these are the limits. This is what we can do. Flip cards, multiple choice, this or that. He built a cipher, like an Egyptian hieroglyphic cipher with sliding functions, but that's about it. We do have currency. For the audience, we have like a 5-module employment laws course that I have delivered live, not gamified, but live and interactive for more than a decade. Now we're making it this adventure game with currency. So you earn coins, you collect things, grab the sword, grab the scroll, time travel portals, all these cool things. But we couldn't build out the whole course because the tech wouldn't support us. So we did the first 2 modules, and we did it with limitations and tried to make it as fabulous as we could in the time we have, which is like workplace realities. Make it as fabulous as you can in the time you have. So then you need to work with your limitations, and you'll do better if you trust the experts and spend your money wisely.
What about, do you feel like you can gamify any kind of, I'll use the word assessment? Like, okay, but we have to test our people on this. Do they, like, I hear you talking, Sue, about behavior change, and I understand that, but we still are required to test our people. So could you put an assessment into this new game engine that Phil's playing? Could I still have a traditional assessment that maybe doesn't look like a traditional assessment that's more gamified?
Well, we have to understand what is an assessment. An assessment is an opportunity for the learner to show what they have learned. And so that's why in leadership training, for example, like CCL, the big $75,000 for 1 week of leadership training, they run leaders through simulations. They create scenarios and send the leader in to have to deal with it, to see if the leader can exhibit the skills, the desired behavior, and the best practices. So scenarios are great, simulations. We want to get away from just a multiple choice quiz. That's not the best way to assess.
Yeah.
What they can do at work. Yeah. What will they be able to, it has to mirror, all training should be built to mirror what they have to do back at work.
Right. Yeah. All right.
So the assessment should do that.
We have to start wrapping up, but as you think about technology investment, gamification, game-based learning, the evolution of technology, the evolution of leadership development, or however, emotional intelligence, whatever that might be, how do you see organizations, will they evolve as they think about these tech investments? And do you see that they'll be seeking to make it more game-like or bring gamification in? As you look ahead, what do you see? Or what do you hope to see?
I'll try to answer quickly so that Phil can elaborate on the tech piece. I just want to say I see my Cententia colleagues and like the people who put their learning products into the GameCon V48 throwdown competition.
Yeah.
People are taking what they have and getting really creative on making, like Rebecca Arnett with her live in-person escape rooms, where she used a go to this laptop, play this video, or go to this laptop station in the escape room and interact with whatever a short scenario or a thing that was on there. And then she had a person on her team outside of the room acting as the evil hacker that you're trying to beat. So, you can use little snippets of lower level tech and then lots of fun zhuzh, lots of fun gameplay in a room with people. I can't remember his name, one of the guys in the throwdown who built the beautiful emotional intelligence game, his game actually is an assessment, because I spoke at length with him. People already had to know the learning content. They had to have been through a training to come play the game.
Right.
So the game was the test of their knowledge, but he had a board, he had cards, he had monsters, he had jewels, he had, a whole fantasy world created. It was beautiful. So, and then some people are just building a little deck of cards game that teaches behavior, whatever. So there's a lot you can do without having to buy a ton of tech. I do see tech changing. I'm getting pretty good with AI stuff, but then what's going to host that AI? How much will it change in a year or two? It's changing every few months. So, the future of tech is, what are we going to spend our money on? What can we do? And you have to have learning experts and developer tools people experts if you want to make this happen. You just do.
Yeah.
Phil.
Thank you for that, Sue. I think about that, Phil, if you want to bring some tech ideas, but I guess I'm not going to say it's scary because that's the stronger word that I want to use, but how do we know this tech will even be here a year from now?
We don't. And that's the issue, is that we've seen companies, name them, but we've seen companies, big companies that buy up tech, buy up companies, buy up software, extract what they want and just trash it.
Yeah, just to see it sunset. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so if you've got, and personally, I can remember having several years of experience, got very good at something, and then all of a sudden it's gone. And you have to go, I have to change now. I have to make a change personally in my software choices. I want to follow up on the tech just a little bit. The thing I think, and we talked about this earlier, is the better that you can incorporate learning into the game so that it appears that you're just playing a game and you're not learning, but you really are, is the goal here.
Mm-hmm.
And that, that's the nosebleed section. Okay, that's where you want to be, and rarely do we get there. But I think my preference, and it can be a tech piece or low tech, is to use as much simulation and scenario in your game design as possible, because I think those are great learning tools. Is to present problems to people that they have to work through. That's good for engineering. That's good for a lot of different disciplines out there. Where you have to make decisions, whether it's management or you're making a decision on a bridge, building a bridge or a calculation or whatever the case may be. Or you just got to I'm a supervisor and I have to make a decision. That's what we try to do in our game, is that we presented a scenario with a lot of narrative and then ask the question, well, okay, what's the proper way to handle this? And I think those are very powerful. And they don't have to be super high tech, because it's not high tech, but the whole envelope needs to be technically sound, and it needs to be easily portable to whatever platform you need to get on
Yeah.
to, and especially, and
Yeah.
here's one more thing, be prepared for updates. Be prepared for that maintenance, because if
Yeah.
you're going to spend a lot of money, which we are, on these e-learning and gamified and game-based learning, you spend a lot of money on them. You want some type of lifetime out of them. Whether that's 5 or 10 years, depending on your population, what you're training, you need to get your money back out of
Yeah. Very good. What I like about that too is that if we operate under the premise that first off, testing is there to show us what we've learned, but also to show what the gaps are. Like, I didn't learn that. That's someplace I need to go back and learn that because I'm missing that. But then it also, learning happens because of the feedback. Like, basically, if we don't get feedback, we're not learning. So then is that going to happen because we've programmed that into the course, like for good, better, best, to give that conversational feedback on this was good, here's next time consider doing this, will that be part of it, or does that involve human management interrelationships of helping to develop their team? So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that, but it is definitely part of it. You can't just pose a simulation and then have no feedback on how was that, right? Now I'm just, again, I'm wasting people's time. They don't know if they did good or not. So that's all really good. I love it so much. Sue, thank you so much, Sue and
Yeah.
Phil, for both being
it.
here. And that,
Welcome.
that clarity before clicking is really an essential. Again, it's more of like the practical side of things. Well, it doesn't feel like a very much play. And depending on what we're wanting, this is a serious investment. So we need to step back and decide, what is it exactly, and how will we know? How are we going to determine that? I'll use you two as an example. Phil got it and Phil's using it, but Sue, for some reason, she's not. So does that mean she didn't get it, or she got it and she's choosing not to? Either way, as a leader in that organization, I've got to step in and see, what do we need to do differently? So that's really good. Thank you so much for this. Sue, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. I think another helpful tip, and this is in the chapter, to our whole conversation here, is take the learning journey approach, because also in my decades of consulting and delivery experience, people think that training is an event, that it's the module that Phil builds, or it's the day you show up to a training in a conference room or something. It has to be, that will fail. You have to properly do all of the before training activities, the during training activities, and the after training activities. That's the learning journey, to make sure that this learning sticks, that it's built well, it sticks, and it's supported, because real measurement of training success happens back on the job. Are they doing the behaviors over the next 12 months? And then are we getting the business result that caused us to ask for this training in the first place? So read the book, read the chapter. Learning journey approach will also save you money, because even inviting people to training in the right way will help get their heads focused on why this is important to them. And I even suggested ways to gamify inviting them to training, to gamify assessing your learning needs, your training needs,
Very
to
good.
incentivize
Yeah.
people. So that'll save you money too.
Excellent. I always like to think, like, because people do see it as an event, as if we have some kind of like magic pill that's going to change behavior in 6 hours time. And my gosh, we'd be like trillionaires if we actually had that. So yeah, doesn't work that way. That's very good. Thank you for that. Sue and Phil, thank you for your time. I know you both have more on your calendar than, as you look at it, like, oh, how are we going to fit in another interview? But I appreciate so much you taking time with me today. And I look forward to everybody reading your chapter and taking away great ideas that they'll put into application from it. So again, everyone who's been listening, this is Monica Cornetti, and the Gamification Quest podcast and the anthology begins pre-sales this next week, and then it'll be available every place that you like to buy your books. We'll have it available there. So thank you so much. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Monica.
Thank you, Phil. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Gamification Quest podcast series. If you'd like to go deeper, you can get your own copy of the Sententia Anthology, where you'll find all of our authors' chapters collected in one place. Simply go to www.sententiagamification.com/anthology. And if you're ready to take the next step in your own practice, visit our homepage at www.sententiagamification.com to explore our certification programs and our community of practice. Until next time, keep designing learning that engages and transforms.